Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Jimmy Dore Show. I'm here with Ron Placone and the miserable liberal Steph Zamorano. Show how pretty she looks.
Hello.
Hi. So NPR decided to track, you know how they're saying that Russia hacked our elections and they're saying that it's an act of international warfare. They're not saying it. Rachel Maddow's saying it. And certain people are using it for reason to ramp up tensions with Russia. Now, anybody who knows anything knows that our CIA has been not only meddling in people's elections, but knocking off dictators and democratically elected governments all around the world since they were invented. So the idea that we're going to somehow this is extra agree. We messed with Russia's election for Christ's sake when Yeltsin. We made sure he got elected. So NPR did they had an interview. The headline for this article was Database Tracks History of U.S. Meddling in Foreign Elections. Mm-hmm. This is from December 22nd, by the way. So the host was the guy named Shapiro, and he interviewed. He says, this is hardly the first time a country has tried to influence the outcome of another country's election. The U.S. has done it, too, by one expert's count, more than 80 times worldwide between 1946 and 2000. Much more than that, by the way. That's a very low estimate. 80 times worldwide between 1946 and 2000. That expert is Dov Levin of Carnegie Mellon University. I asked him to tell me about one election where U.S. intervention likely made a difference in the outcome.
It's a good institution, by the way. My dad's a professor there.
Carnegie Mellon?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Look at that. So you come from book readers.
Yeah.
Different life. Totally different life than me. So he responds by saying, well, one example of us intervening in a foreign election was our intervention in Serbia. Yugoslavia in 2000 election there. Slobodan Milosevic was running for re-election, and we didn't want him to stay in power there due to his tendency, to disrupt the Balkans and his human rights violations. So we intervened in various ways for the opposition candidate Kostunica, and we gave funding to the opposition, and we gave them training, and we gave them campaign aid. And according to my estimate, that assistance was crucial in enabling the opposition to win. So it's funny that they chose that example and not the later example, because in the Ukraine, just recently, the United States intervened to topple the democratically elected government and install a right-wing government that doesn't have the support of the people. Why? Because that right-wing government is friendly to the Europe and United States. We just did that in the Ukraine. We just did that. And we're in bed with frickin' actual Nazis. Okay. So on to this rest of this interview. It's a very short interview. So the host asks, well, how often are these interventions public versus covert? He says, well, it's basically, there's about 1/3 of them are public and 2/3 of them are covert. In other words, they're not known to the voters in the target before the election. So we do it all the time, and we do it covertly. Host asks him, your count does not include coups, attempts at regime change. It sounds like, depending on the definitions, the tally could actually be much higher. Yeah, because he doesn't include frickin' coups and attempts at regime change. Mm-hmm. Like we've been doing in Syria. He says, well, you're right. I don't count and discount covert coup d'etats like the United States did in Iran in 1953. There was a democratically elected government in Iran in 1953, Mossadegh, and he wanted to export democracy, United States-style democracy, across the Middle East. CIA said, fuck you. We'd prefer strong-armed theocracies like Saudi Arabia because we can count on them. You can't count on democracies. They're messy. So we overthrew them and installed the Shah. That's what we did. This is what we do. like in Iran in 1953 and Guatemala in 1954. I only took when the United States is trying directly to influence an election for one of the sides. Other types of interventions I don't discuss. But if we would include those, then of course the number would be larger, yeah. So much more than 80. Much more than 80. The host then asks, how often do other countries like Russia, for example, try to alter the outcome of elections as compared to the United States? Our Carnegie Mellon expert says, well, from my data set, the United States is the most common user of this technique. Russia and the Soviet Union since 1945 has used it half as much. My estimate has been 36 cases between 1946 and 2000. We know also that the Chinese have used this technique and the Venezuelans when the late Hugo Chavez was still in power in Venezuela and other countries. The host then asks, the United States is arguably more vocal than any other country about trying to promote democracy and democratic values around the world. Does this strike you as conflicting with that message? This is fun. I couldn't write this well. This is good writing. Our expert from Carnegie Mellon says, it depends upon if we are assisting pro-democratic side. Could be like that in the case of Slobodan Milosevic that I talked about earlier. I believe that could be helpful for democracy. If it helps less nicer candidates or parties, then naturally it can be less helpful. Boy, is that guy doing double speak.
Maybe the Shapiro guy is like a Colbert with sharper teeth. Like maybe it's a satirical question.
The U.S. is arguably more vocal than about spreading democracy. Isn't that at odds with spreading democracy? And he said, maybe, not probably, maybe not. I don't know. I don't want to get on the wrong side of the government. That's what it sounded like, Levin said. Obviously, your examination of 20th century attempts to influence elections does not involve hacking because computers were not widespread until recently. He says, yeah. The host says, well, in your view, is technology, the way that we saw in the November election, dramatically changing the game? Or is this just the latest evolution of an effort that has always used whatever tools are available? He goes on, he says, I would say it's more the latter. I mean, the Russians or the Soviets before unfrequently did these types of intervention, just, without the cyber hacking tools, the old style people meeting in the park in secret, giving out and getting information and things like that, so to speak. So that's the entire interview that NPR did, and they did it with this guy, scholar, who's telling you that he is, by his count, and he doesn't even count coups, 80 times the United States has directly intervened. He's not counting indirectly intervening. Direct. 80 times. Hillary Clinton helped overthrow a democratically elected government in Honduras or install a frickin' right-wing strong arm. Just in the last few years, she did that. So I show you this because this got reported on NPR, but it is not being focused. There's no focus on this. The focus is the exact opposite. Russia, 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 and oh my God, look, we got to start bombing more. But here it is. I feel like Mort Saul used to come out on the Dick Cavett show with a stack of newspapers, and he would tell people stuff about our country in Vietnam, and they're like, what? He's like, it's right here. It's like on page 20, and it's on page 18, section D. And now they don't put it on the front page for a month like they've been putting this Russia stuff on the front page for a month. They're not going to put that on the front page above the fold. Hey, by the way, all that stuff that we're doing, we do the exact same shit. And we always have. And so what that tells you is that people who are doing all this Russia hacked our election stuff are doing it to confuse you, distract you, and throw you off the scent. And the whole goddamn establishment media is in collusion. And nobody worse at it than Rachel Maddow and MSNBC, literally calling for war, saying that Russia has attacked us. Russia has not attacked us. So there you go. Any Steph, Ron, anything you want to say about that? There you go. 80 times direct intervention. You know it's much higher. I guess, is he counting Iraq? I wonder if he counts Iraq.
I just think it's interesting that NPR only dove that deep with him, and they asked those types of. I mean, obviously that was not meant to be a satirical question, and like they're asking questions like that to try to justify, and that's why, like, I mean, you know, NPR, they do some good work, but a lot of times these days, in my opinion, NPR stands for nice, polite Republicans.
That's exactly what NPR is. The fact that this snuck through. Well, you see how long the interview was. It was about 5 seconds.
Right. Yeah.
It was a 5-second long interview, and he didn't really talk about. We've intervened like when? Oh, like when we install right-wing strongmen? They didn't say that. They talked about the one time when we helped a person who was pro-democracy. The one time. That's the one example the guy pulled out. He doesn't pull out all the other horrible times, like what we did in Libya, what we did in Iraq, what we did in Iran, what we did in Honduras, Chile. Ugh. He's a thug and a strong man, as opposed to our leaders, as opposed to Donald Trump or George Bush or Barack Obama, who took 2 wars and turned them into 7, ran out of bombs in Syria. Anyway, so there you go, and you wonder why people get their news from YouTube. Thanks for your support.